I'm creating Character Creator, I like to start with the base toon and a reference of the image I'm trying to design. I don't usually use the morph tools, but here I am just to show how far you can actually achieve the desired results within Character Creator. At this stage what I'm doing is just toning down the eyes, getting rid of unwanted sections, and starting to work out the main shapes that I need. So looking at the reference image, I normally change to a colour similar to the final image that I'm after. And then from here, I either pick head shape or eyes to start developing further. A couple of things I normally do is get rid of eye inclusions to start with, and things like tear lines. I find they get in the way of the sculpting process. So start scaling the eyes, looking at the proportions of the face and how wide the eyes need to be in comparison to the head size. Normally the general rule of thumb is the gap in between the eyes for humans is one eye shape, one eye size in the middle. In this case obviously it's more skeleton, so we've got a very narrow bridge between the two eyes. So once again, using the morph sliders, which I don't normally use, solely because I find it quicker to do in Blender, but for demonstration purposes I thought we'd run through the morphs that I have available. Now I do have headshot and headshot, and I think it's the realistic human pack, so there's probably more sliders available that comes, that's not normally standard. So what I'm looking at here is to find where I can get the most rounded eye shape. I found the eye outer shape and the eye inner shape, as well as I think there's a couple of sliders called round eye. This is slow and tedious, but you can get the desired results, as you see. Hopefully someday Character Creator will have a drag system so that you can drag every single point on the morph shape or on the character. At the moment it only allows you to select larger portions of the character's model, so you can't quite get the refinement you need without using the sliders within Character Creator. I normally turn off the eyelashes. I find they get in the way. For most of the characters I do, they don't have eyelashes, so I usually edit the mesh and shrink them into the head itself so you can't see them. At this stage all I've done is hidden them. So within this section, in the edit mesh, go in there, and what I'm trying to do is select the eyelashes and tweak those shapes a little bit. Using the sculpt tools and the smooth mesh really help here if you're trying to do it all within Character Creator. And once again, just mirror whatever you do on the right or the left, mirror it to the other side to keep some sort of symmetry. So this is where I hide the eyelashes. So it's just a matter of selecting elements if you can find them. Here I'm having trouble. And hiding these just so they don't get in the way while I'm editing the mesh. Once again, going to sculpt, smooth off the rough edges, just to try and refine that shape a little bit more. And spend hours and hours and hours going backwards and forwards, which is what I normally do. Into Blender, sculpt, come back into Character Creator, have a look how it's going, and just keep going between the two. In this case I'm doing it solely through the morphs, and as you can see, pretty good eye shape so far. Just needs a little bit more refinement. This is where I tend to get rid of the eye inclusions or the tear lines. They're just not needed. so much detail is just not needed in a stylized character, depending on what you're designing. I try and keep mine as simple as possible. Try and keep a clean mesh. Here I'm just checking the overall shapes, concentrating heavily on the eyes because they're the main feature of this character. Using the character correct eye blink as well. If this doesn't work, sometimes it doesn't always fix the eye blink. You can go into proportional editing, which I think we do a little bit later, and that allows you to push the eyes back. So once again, just going in there and pushing the elements, hiding those tear lines. Just so I can see the shape of the eye properly. Smooth the mesh. I always check smooth mesh. That'll give you a better result of the final outcome. Sometimes it looks a bit jaggedy within Character Creator. Next thing is have a look at the eyes itself. So, and hide the eye mesh. Because I don't use the morph editor that often, I always forget what sliders do what, apart from the obvious ones like Icecar. So what I'm looking for here is an option to round the eyes, the corners of the eyes. There's a few options within here. As mentioned earlier, I normally go into Blender for this. It's just so much quicker with the Blender's sculpt tools. But I just thought I'd see how far I could get within Character Creator itself. And all the options are there. Just a matter of knowing what they are. In the end, I start adding these to my favorites, because in future I'll probably use them a little bit more to get the initial shape I want before going into Blender. So to add it to your favorites, you just hit the love heart next to the slider, and then you can go into currently used or favorites, and they'll all remain. Even with a new project, your favorites will remain there, which is really good. So in the future, I'll probably build up a bit of a library of favorites of the most commonly ones. There's probably about 20 sliders that I would use maximum for stylized characters. And remember too, the limits, you can go over the limits, negative 100 and 100, you can actually type in the values that you want. In this case, a lot of mine are in the 300, 400, 500 mark. It just saves baking and then sliding it again. So here you can see I'm baking the negative 100s. I could have actually just typed in -4, -500, whatever value I needed, and would have saved me hitting the bake button so many times. But you get there eventually. So here we are again in the edit mesh, just rounding off areas, trying to get that fuller eye. One thing to mention too, as you come in and out of edit mesh, any element you've hidden tend to reappear again, which is really annoying. I'm just pulling the outer eye here, just to get a bit more rounded. Mirroring it to the other side. And once again, hiding the elements. You can actually, if you're using Blender like I do, you can go into Blender, and what I tend to do is shrink these particular elements right down and hide them inside the skull. That way, when you do come back into Character Creator, you don't have to repeat this process over and over again. Because if you're like me, you'll forget, and you've got to do your final render and you'll realize you've got these funny looking parts of the mesh hanging out of your eyes. So the weird elements you can see here are the eye occlusions. You can either, sometimes I get rid of them, other times I just fix element, eye element. Or if you delete them all together, you can actually click the add eye element and add the corners of the tears, which you can see here, and also the eye element itself. And this is where I decide to delete the corners. So I'm pretty happy with that eye shape at this stage. Once again, I usually smooth the mesh just to see how smooth the eye roundness is, and once again fix the eye. In this case it's quite good. If anyone's wondering, I'm using PureRef here for my imaging, for my reference imaging, and I'm just pinning it to the top of the window. It's a really good product. So there you go. So that eye shape's not bad. It could be rounder, but depends how far you want to take it. Normally I'd tweak these in Blender once again. So there we go. That round eye is what I've been looking for. Don't worry about the rough edges at this stage. They can be smoothed out at any stage. I'm just more interested in getting the particular eye shape that I'm after. So as you can see, I spend a lot of time just tweaking and moving areas. So here I'm just trying to define those ridges around the eyes. So in the Bob model, you can see he's got quite harsh creases around the eyes itself. So I'm just trying to get those shapes. And that's where I demonstrate 800 for the eye crease define. Rather than hitting bake every time, 8 times, I just type in 800. And that gives the same result. Here I'm just trying to define some of the head shape. So I find Character Creator, the sculpting side's really good for defining the large shapes, such as the mouth, the eyes, the ears, the size of the head. And then from there I usually take it into Blender to do the finals. So the tweaking, I don't always do the finer details in Blender. Sometimes I'll just use the skin tools, and the wrinkle tools, as you'll see later, gives us a lot of definition in the face without actually having to do anything. The ears, I'll get the basic shape for the ears, but here I try to pin them back to the head, and obviously without a lot of success. So then I try the negative value. Once again, not bad, but not really what I'm after. So I decide to take those back to normal, and I'll finish those a little bit later. So from here I'll just get the scale and the basic shape. Hopefully in future versions of Character Creator they'll advance on their sculpting tools. Really only need half a dozen sculpting tools that allow us to manipulate the model directly rather than these sliders. It's just a personal preference. I think the skin texturing that they've got and the PBR texturing within Character Creator is brilliant. I do most of my texturing within Character Creator, and now and then I'll do a little bit of texture painting in Blender, just to add a few details or a few colours to the existing textures. So here I'm just looking at the mouth shape and size. Really just trying to get the distance from the nose to the mouth and the distance from the bottom of the mouth to the chin. So the elements I normally look at is the eyes, the eye distance between the nose and the mouth. For stylized, they tend to be a lot more exaggerated, and larger foreheads. You stylized is there's not really any rules. So here, defining the brow. Once again, I'm trying to do as much as I can within Character Creator to show you can take it a lot further. I'm lazy. So here I'm really pushing out those brows just to give some shape. Yeah. Usually I go into Blender and just drag them out. Here I'm looking for wrinkles. Just to define that top area, but later on I remembered we've got the wrinkle crease system, so I can actually use the wrinkle system. That's way too many wrinkles, but that's what I mean with the sliders. You can put whatever value in there. Just be nice to have a brush that we could actually drag out some wrinkles rather than these sliders. Anyway, I move on from there, and then I turn up the smooth mesh just to see what the base shape is like. So normally what you do is you work out your large shapes without any smooth mesh, same with sculpting. I normally work in 3 passes, so large shapes to refine head shape. You should be able to get 90% of the character you're designing done with the lowest poly count, and then I'll go up to the next level, I'll add a little bit more detail, and then the final one is the minute detail, and then I'll bake off from there. So once again, still playing with the wrinkle systems. In the end, I do just use the wrinkle here. So as you can see, this way it's a lot more effective because we get true wrinkles with the face expressions. So because this model's not going to be animated, I can simply just select the expression on the face to obtain the wrinkles that I'm after. So I'm just checking. There we go. So there's the mouth wrinkles I was after. So rather than sculpt those, I do define them a little bit more later, but they are already included because of the wrinkle system. It's adding those normal maps within it. So it saves a lot of work, especially when you're not animating, or even when you are animating, but in this case it's just a static, so it cuts down a lot of work. Next we work on the eyes. I use Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, so that's my texture editor. So here I'm just creating new textures for the eyes, and as we know, Bob's got pretty simple eyes, basically just white eyes with black pupils, so a really easy one to do. So we just paint out the background, add a couple of white textures. I did this a long way around, I don't know why I did it this way. You could have just added a white layer and added the black on top. So that's our basic texture done. Hit the save button, it'll flatten it and automatically reload in Character Creator. And from here we just need to copy the base color or the diffuse map across to each eye value. And then earlier we made the diffuse map, the opacity to 0. We just need to bring the strength back up to be able to see our diffuse maps. And then we have simple bob eyes. Later on I'll just tweak these a little bit. I realise the pupils are a little bit small. But it gives us the overall shape, and we can now start seeing Bob come to life. So here I've transferred into Blender using the GoB setup. I have a full tutorial if you want to know how to use it. So I've skipped forward here, and this is where I do a lot of my tweaking. So just in the sculpt mode with the mirror on, and I start refining the shapes. Once again, you can spend hours and hours. I find it quite relaxing sculpting. Spend many hours every day just sculpting. So what I've actually done here, this is a little bit further into it. I've set some sculpting levels within Blender here. On the right hand side, you'll see the detail for sculpting is set to level 2. There's a step before this is where I just work on the base shape and pull out the bigger shape. So I was sort of trying to break my own rule, really, is defining areas before you define the face features. So what I decided to do is do a couple of sculpts here, add a bit of detail, and then I bake it out. Then later on I go back into the base shape and tweak the proper shapes before I go into the detail. Everyone will tell you not to do it. Stop doing the detail before you've got the shapes, and here I break the same rules. So as you can see, I'm just narrowing that bridge of the nose. The reason this won't work is because I've just gone into texture mode here to make it easier on the visuals. The reason this won't work is because I haven't changed the base shape. So when I bake this out and go back to the normal layout in the model, this nose shape will return back to the base. Because basically all I'm doing here is baking out a normal map, which is laid on top of the base shape. But it does give you an idea on how I get the final shapes of the nose. But not the right order to do it. And you will actually see here when I go back to layout mode after I've baked that the nose will return as if I haven't even touched it. So a good lesson of what not to do. Here I'm just trying to find the shape of that nose, which is the cavity. So just using the grab tool, just push the vertices around, and then start using the control key to invert on the mesh with the same move tool. There's really nothing you can't create and get back into Character Creator as long as you don't change the vertex count. So you can't subdivide mesh, but you can certainly add clay, use the add clay tools and knock yourself out. Awesome. As I mentioned, this is actually a waste of time here because I do lose all this detail as soon as I bake the texture out. So it is actually the wrong order, but Still gives you a good visual how I created the nose. Here I'm just creasing in the edges just to refine that shape a little further. And pinching in that center part just to get the sharper corners. I'm using the Wacom tablet here. Do my sculpting with the Wacom tablet. Just you get better control. That's not to say you can't use the mouse. It's a lot harder to refine some of these edges, and especially when you get to high detailed sculpting level, to get those fine lines, it's much easier with a tablet. So here I bake out the texture map. As I mentioned, the video you just watched is actually the second stage, which is the sculpting stage, the detailed stage. You should always change the base shape, get rid of the nose, change the big shapes, and define the model prior to starting the sculpt. So I apologise if this confused anyone.
A few moments later.
So this is what I mean. Once you get back into sculpting mode, all that detail has gone because the base mesh hadn't been altered. This is where you should work on the base mesh first. That way, the finer details I just completed would be added to this base mesh. So hence the reason the nose is still there. So just export the layer here. And the only reason I'm exporting this layer is so I can retain some of the sculpting work that I'd completed. From here we get back into Character Creator, the Gobi plugin. Once again we skip back into Blender just to start adding the stitches in the mouth. And there's so many ways to do this. I found it easier to use the curve tool, and it's an add-on called I think it's Curve Extras. If you enable that, as you can see, I just drag out some basic canter and area, I think they are, shapes. You can do the same with just your basic curves. So from here, all I do is fill the caps, shrink the corners with Alt S, holding your best down, just to pinch those corners in, and then just use the move tool to shape those stitches. I don't spend a lot of time on the stitches. They're not really that detailed. I could have spent a lot more time, but because they were so small. Once again, I'm quite lazy when it comes to detail. If it's not going to be seen up too close, I will do quick and dirty methods just to get the basic shapes and the point across. Same with texturing. My texturing's very minimal. I try and use as many tools available to me. So if something's available in Character Creator, I'll try and use it from there rather than reinvent the wheel. Unless it's clothing. This particular piece of clothing I haven't got, then I'll model that. Otherwise, I'll try and find something similar in Character Creator, bring it into Blender and model it from there. Very rarely do I start from scratch. So from here, I'm just joining all of the, converting them to mesh, and then I join them into one mesh called stitches, and then just apply a simple texture to them. Later on I changed the stitches to a bluish colour rather than this green, purple or black, just to match the image better. And from here I just squash out the stitches a little just to shape them and start shaping the face. So this, as you can see now, at this stage I've modelled the base, gone back and changed the shape of the base, got rid of that nose, and now I'm back into my sculpt level 2, and I'm adding those details such as the face wrinkles, defining the cheekbones, and really just getting a bit more detail into the mesh. Once again, just looking at the reference and trying to pull out the basic shapes. So define the cheekbones, pull out the face, the lips. It's not exactly the reference, but the overall shape's not too bad. So back into Character Creator. This is where I use the wrinkles and the skin textures to really get some good detail. I could have done this in Blender, but hey, why do it when you have the tools here? So it really makes a difference to the detail in the face. And I do this for most of my stylized characters, but then sometimes I'll just smooth them out a little bit, just so they're not as refined. So here I'm just adding each texture into the layers rather than replacing, just to get extra wrinkles. So really quick, as you can see. This would take quite a while in Blender. The great thing about this is too, you can go into the material layer editor and actually change the level detail, which is here. So these are all available to you, and you can select the texture scale. Here I use 2K images. This stage I go into the makeup because I want to add some dark areas behind the eyes. And once again, I think the Necromancer makeup here works really well. It's just a matter of applying that. I applied this one and I think it was the wrong one. There's a better one that has more drips down under the eyes. So just checking the eyes, it's definitely not the look I was going for. But because it's in the layer editor, we can go in and change all these colors. This is where I search for the other Necromancer makeup, which has more of the darker features that I'm after. So that one there. And as you'll see, it makes a massive difference. So simply just delete that one out. So now it's just a matter of going back into the editor. Oh, we add some lip colors as well, just to darken the lips off, just to refine them a little bit. And then we go and tweak these layers. So it's good having different blend modes. Here I choose a select light, the soft light. Just bring that down a smidge. So let's just refine the lips a little bit better. And then for the eyeshadow and the eyeliner, it's just a matter of changing the colors to match the skin tones. There's no set rule here. Play around with the sliders till you find the colors that you like. It's amazing how much detail there are within these texture models here. So it's not hard to get good skin textures and makeup from the unexpected. A lot of the makeup options that you see here I've used on plenty of male characters and stylized characters. Just saves me going in. Like I said, I'm really lazy when it comes to modeling and painting and texturing, so I'll try and find anything that's already been created and then just tweak it to my liking. So that texture there works really well. So there we go. If this video's helped you in any way, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. That way I'll know this information's of interest and I'll keep doing more. Love to hear your thoughts or your processes in the comments below. Feel free to ask questions as well. So overall, not a bad result for minimal effort really. Later on I do add some clothing to Bob just out of the templates and I tweak the colours a little. So as you can see, going through the different subdivisions depending on how much detail I require. Final result's pretty good.